Anna, very nice to meet you. You're now 5 years. Oh my God. She's still smiling, so it's good. We just met. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Years ago, yes. I think it was something connected to
now is working with Dan Uptown. You're the vet, and he's a marketing I'm standing. We went to see the show.
on avait fait et je suis en train de m'attacher parce que c'est ce que l'artiste croit dans les
I forgot that I do mention that you're back in an institutionalized setting. Like, of course, it happens to us all. Yeah. watching what's going on here. It's the same age, but it's really
Yeah, I think we should start speaker. People coming in. We'll let them come in. No, just a few. Yeah. We'll keep this. I mean, if people want to say we should start.
and then good. Good evening. I'm Kathy Halbreich, and I am the Associate Director of MoMA. I'm delighted to welcome you to this talk, which in fact grows out of one of the most crucial qualities of successful programming across continents and histories, and that is collaboration. Tonight's event is a partnership between MoMA's online forum Post, which is devoted to cross-geographical reconsiderations of modern and contemporary art, and Independent Curators International, a remarkable organization founded in 1975 by two really remarkable women, Nina Castelli-Sundell and Susan Solins, who both sadly died within months of each other in 2014. But they left an indelible mark on our fields in so many ways. ICA was initially conceived to realize and tour exhibitions, activities that I believe later prompted it to develop an ongoing series of convenings of curators from across the world who meet to discuss new curatorial models that better represent the histories of the modern and how those histories shape work being made today. This program complements those overseen by Jay Levinson and MoMA's international program. Among those programs is CMAP, or Contemporary and Modern Art Perspectives, a long-term research program that has involved more than 175 scholars, curators, and artists from Eastern Europe, Asia, and Latin America in seminars, day-long seminars, with 42 MoMA curators, educators, librarians, and archivists. It provided, in fact, the intellectual foundation for an exhibition we did this year called Transmissions, Art in Eastern Europe and Latin America, 1960 through 1980. Parallel to this program is the International Curatorial Institute, a 2-week intensive program that allows 4 MoMA curators and 8 senior curators from places such as Mexico, Ethiopia, Qatar, Japan, and Peru to study together, to study the leadership challenges surrounding 21st century museums. It is designed and run in collaboration, again that word, with the Center for Curatorial Leadership founded by Buffy Easton and Agnes Gund, President Emerita of MoMA, and a dear friend of both Susan and Nina. I mention this because as we talk about vast spaces, sometimes it's relationships, a small world that brings good things into being. There is one more loop I'd like to trace tonight, and that's my friendship with Catherine David, which begins sometime in the 1980s when she was curator at the Pompidou, where she recently returned as deputy director. They are very, very lucky to have her back. We have worked together at various times, but perhaps most effectively in commissioning in 1990, Bordering on Fiction, Chantal Ackerman's Dest, the filmmaker's first museum installation. And she'll probably never quite forgive me for serving on the committee that appointed her to direct Documenta 10 in Kassel, Germany, an almost impossible task that she turned into a real exhibition with a persuasively political point of view. I remember Katrine explaining at the Documenta interview that while European museums were reluctant to loan their treasures, their paintings and sculpture, to African institutions which often lacked proper climate control, great films circulated easily, both inciting and inspiring impressive filmmaking throughout the continent. Perhaps I should have known this aftershock of colonialism, but I didn't. Katrine has been traveling to places once underestimated by some of us as centers of cultural practice for a long time. For example, a year after Documenta, she became the director of the long-term project Contemporary Arab Representations, involving visual artists, architects, poets, filmmakers, and critics from the region in exhibitions, seminars, and publications. Recently, Katrine organized Reframing Modernism at the new National Gallery of Singapore. Moving away from the increasingly toxic and often misdirected narrative of influence, Katrine brought together 48 modern artists from Southeast Asia and Europe to create a network of connections between artists working in different parts of the world. I'm eager to hear more about this evening. But before Katrine begins, I'd like to welcome our partner tonight, Renaud Proche, the executive director of ICI. I hope this is followed by many more conversations.
Thank you very much, Kathy, for these remarks. And good evening, everyone. I want to give you all a warm welcome on behalf of ICI. Welcome to this Curators Perspectives talk series and tonight's event with Catherine David, organized, as Kathy said, in collaboration with MoMA, MoMA's international program, and Post. And I want to particularly thank the team at MoMA, Jay Levinson's team, first and foremost, but also ICI's trustees and Hartfield Foundation, who made this event tonight possible. For those of you who are not very familiar with the Curator's Perspective, I just want to very briefly say that it is an itinerant talk series program. Like the vast majority of ICI programs, it is itinerant. It takes place in different art organizations throughout the city. In fact, sometimes beyond New York, across the US as well. The series is an opportunity to hear firsthand from leading international curators who share with us their practice, their experience, their thinking and knowledge. It is a way to gain access to the information that really shapes art scenes beyond New York. Through curators, we learn about artists, about their practice. We also learn of the cultural as well as social, political, and economic contexts of art production around the world. And I think it is particularly fitting that we welcome Catherine David tonight, whose work has consistently strived at making sense of the world around us while preserving, I think, the necessary nuances and resisting common oversimplifications. We were talking earlier about getting on the ground and trying to sort of understand things for what they are firsthand physically. So I think that this drive is, of course, at the heart of MoMA's international program. It's also at the core of ICI's mission to really foster platforms for meaningful international engagement through the sharing of knowledge and access to a multiplicity of perspectives when it comes to contemporary art. Catherine has been truly influential in these and other similar strategies for international curatorial engagement in the age of globalization, and we've talked about her pioneering work as artistic director of Documenta 10, but also her founding of Contemporary Arab Representations, and of course her work currently as deputy director of the Musée National d'Art Moderne at the Centre Pompidou in Paris. So it is truly wonderful to see such a great crowd here for Catherine David tonight, and I will now ask all of you to join me in giving Catherine a warm, warm welcome to the podium.
So thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me to be back in New York, even so it was a little bit complicated this time, and I really want to thank very, very much the two teams, MoMA and ICI, who worked a lot for having the visa in time. My ESTA has been denied for a few reasons you will see here, because I was a lot in Iran and Baghdad, and in other countries which don't look to be as problematical. It would be another story. What I will do tonight, I would like to answer to the invitation. The invitation is coming from ICI, who are in MoMA, and we are trying to figure out how we could give a better visibility to a certain number of works which were produced in many different parts of the world, whether they were produced in the modern times or whether they are produced now. Even so, I think that these days the emphasis and the very, very complicated problems are more in the side of the modern moment. First of all, I don't want to make a summary of my work. I want to go back to Documenta, which was really a long, long time ago, and just to mention a few projects I worked on in the last 20 years so that we have a minimum bad images, but a few elements are helping to understand the trajectory and eventually a few paradoxes. So I will begin with this contemporary Arab representation. And from now on, I think it would be very interesting to take advantage of this audience. And it's not too big for not making questions whenever you want after. And I'm not sure I will answer the question of Kathy right now in this short presentation, but I'm really open a little bit later. And I might have a few comments, and not all positive, about this request from big museums to have a kind of a parallel presentation of their supposed to be own modernities. This is the chapter NGS Singapore. So in the last more or less 20 years, I worked on this project that was mentioned before, contemporary Arab representations. And I will show you, so this I want to mention because it is important, because these people are helping us to work very intelligently and precisely. And this project was produced by Tapies Foundation in Barcelona and shown systematically, meaning the 3 stops and the 3 different chapters by Malmö University Museum and Peter de Witt Rotterdam. And there was 1 chapter in Berlin. I will show you just the last chapter, which was the Iraqi equation. This is Kunstwerke in Berlin with a very special installation. The project was mainly organized around films which were made in Iraq by Iraqi filmmakers, whether they would live in Iraq or whether they would have come back to Iraq. And the films were presented in the context of a certain number of works developed by 4 generations of exiled Iraqi artists, ranging from Nedin Kufi to a few other ones I won't comment now because I just want to give you a few ideas. This is a major painting by Latif Saibilari, which had been developed as a wallpaper, of course, with his authorization and agreement. So this was this project after, so we can have a specific question because you will understand where I want to go after. Another exhibition, I'm trying to follow the order, which is always difficult with these machines, was the exhibition of images, photographies by Baman Jalali, Tapies Foundation, which I don't find on my, disappeared from there. So trust me. After we had, I'm trying to find, to follow kind of chronological order, the exhibition for ADASH, Abu Dhabi Authority for Culture and Heritage in Abu Dhabi, the pavilion they had in Venice in 2009, where I tried to show a contemporary panorama of the Emirates, United Arab Emirates, and trying to make understandable that it was not only and not at all kind of instant coffee culture, but that you had certain complex history explaining where we were now, and so we had a certain. This is a kind part of the installation we had in the works. It's always very disappointing to show images. This is we transported the studio archive of Hassan Sharif, which was, at least at that time, from my point of view, the only genuine museum project in the region, and which still is, to a certain extent. Just for helping to the exhibition of Marwan Kathabashi early works from the 1962 to 72, which was organized in Beirut and the Beirut Exhibition Center and in Saravesh Foundation in Porto. And here I'm showing one of my favorite works, which is Marwan would kill me. He doesn't want to admit, he doesn't want to accept, but it is a portrait of Al-Sayyab, the very famous Iraqi poet from the first half of the century. It would be too complicated tonight to discuss what is a portrait for Marwan and what is a figure. I'm just trying to follow the order, and it's not so easy with these things. And now I would mention the one of the very last project, which is the exhibition of Vifed Olam retrospective we organized in Pompidou. These are very bad images of the installation, but just showing that the installation, well, this is the cover of the catalog, and I think that in New York it's quite interesting to to show it, because it's really a moment, an image from the 40s, where you can see that the photographer and probably Wilfredo Lam, who was complice with him, is using the strategies used at the time for representing major Black American artists, whether they would be writers or more frequently jazzmen or musicians. This would be also a long story, but it's not the point tonight. Another image of the installation where we tried to articulate very different medium, very different moments and dialogues of Wilfredo Lam with different moments of the avant-garde. He was contaminated by and contaminating from the late 20s up till the late 60s, let's say, in this case. And reframing modernism, just for Kathy. I don't have many images, but I have images of two artists I was really impressed by when I was in Singapore in the exhibition. A major work by Tan Chang, who is an artist from Cambodia, was very on his own, and I got many comments from the few Cambodian people visiting the exhibition that it was the first time they were able to see Tan Chang works in real and in an exhibition. It's apparently very closed up by the family in Cambodia, and this work is has a very special title, 14th October 1973. It has been painted. It's a self-portrait, a day of a major student massacre in Phnom Penh. And I also wanted to show from this a work by Latif Mohideen, with an artist from Malaysia, and it's a series called Pagoda, which she began to work on in the mid-60s. I was very impressed by this work, and I have to say that what I saw after is really encouraging, and I would consider working with Mohideen when possible. So I just wanted to mention a few projects and forthcoming. Because what I'm working on at the moment might influence or inspire a few comments I will give tonight. So between other things, a book project which is very late, partly because of me, a project of book with Ahmed Matar from Saudi, which is a book on not on Mecca, as simplistic people would say. The title of the book is Desert of Faran, Unofficial Histories Behind the Mass Expansion of Mecca. The book will be published by Lars Müller, and it is, in a way, what's happening in the back of the grandiose new mosque and the daily life of Mecca, and giving many deep views on the geopolitical, economical, social complexities of the city, which is probably one of the first globalized cities in the world. So these are two images of the stoning, where people are lancé, I don't remember in English how you say, throwing stones against the evil. This is an image of what you see from the very expensive hotels which are in the Mecca Tower, and when you can see the interior of the mosque from your room or from the lobby. This is the major view of the what they call the pilgrims' highways leading to the place we saw previously for the stoning. Just showing a few images. Of course, the book is including many of it. This is a more close to say cliche image of Mecca in the last years, with the rebuilding of the mosque in the city. And this is one of the many less familiar images of Mecca, which is there are Saudi African musicians playing in a wedding very close to Mecca city. another project I'm working on at the moment, and with Samba Dawil and Tilferuat. It's a project trying to reconstitute the work of the Egyptian group Art and Freedom, which was active in Cairo in the 30s and 40s. So it's a very famous image of the group all together in Cairo. And last but not least, and I'm just showing one image. I'm working on a monography of Dia Sawi, and this is a very big drawing Sabran Shatila he did in 1983, and which was bought by the Tate a few years ago. And I forgot images, but it's not really a problem. I got images from the Hassan Sharif retrospective in Adash in 2011. So showing that it's taking us, and it's maybe a little bit brutal, but as Kathy Albrecht mentioned previously, I joined, came back to the National Museum of Modern Art in Paris close to 2 years ago now, and many of the ideas I got through this diverse project in the last 20 years and even further have to be, they don't have to fit with the National Museum of Modern Art, but they are supposed to sometimes cohabitate, and they are supposed to inspire a certain number of decisions and projects we are considering. And I think that when we want to think about the possibilities, what our work can be visible, and now it can be, it can inspire the programmation, and more than the programmation of the life on the museum. We have to go back to a major problem there, which is what major museums of modern art, I'm not speaking about contemporary because I think it's another issue, beginning with the fact that in many museums, no, I don't know in New York, but in Paris, we are considering modern, contemporary, and perspective. And of course, it means, between other things, that what I called contemporary up till very recently is now slowly but surely joining the modern. So we really have to be aware of this very slippery terrain in the way we are articulating the works and showing them those which are going along quite well and those which are more difficult to install together. But the big question now for these museums, which are supposed to deal with global modern, meaning trying to take into consideration cultural trans-regional dynamics and exchanges, exceeding the collections and knowledge competence of this institution. So what I mean is that you see more and more that we are aware that the global modern has been developed through very complex regional and trans-regional dynamics. We know about that, but who is the we? And it's quite too clear now that many of these works are exceeding. They are not part of the collection, then they can't be part of the collections. And they are also exceeding the competence of many museums team, even though recently, and it's quite impressive in New York to see what happened in MoMA and also to Met, a certain number of very brilliant young curators or researchers have joined the team, researchers and curators having very specific knowledge about specific regions of the globe, which I find, of course, extremely positive and encouraging. When we think about the major modern art public collections, and it's quite clear that when we think about MoMA, for instance, or when we think about National Museum of Modern Art, and with a few exceptions due to, which are including Western art, with the exception precisely of a few works which are coming from trans-regional dynamics of avant-garde and urban cosmopolitanism. if we just leave that aside, which means it's a minimum heterogeneity in supposed to be and called Western collections, we see that all the major modern art museums have, of course, an history. And this history is like a DNA. You can't transform it completely. You can't revive it permanently. And this history, of course, is in connection with the long history of the community and the nation. Of course, depending on if the collection had a long colonial story, what kind of colonial story, and so on and so forth. For the nation and the community, the people, those who built the collection over the years. Museums of modern art have also been acknowledged, and in a very open way, as the engine and the rule in the development, the influence, and the transmission of modern art, the building of an audience, etc. So this is what has been taken for granted for a long time. But if we look more carefully to what happened, it appears more like an exception when we look carefully again at the global history of modernity and modernism and its local developments and achievements. So here I would like to insist briefly on the difference between modernity and modernism, which is probably helping to understand the dysfunctioning of certain museums and the way we are thinking about the collection and the dischronies. Modernity, and I speak about that because I had long debates with a colleague of mine precisely for the Singapore exhibition. Modernity, and it's a very rough kind of definition. Modernity can be identified through a certain number of tangible conditions. The technical revolution, the development of cities, the transformation of working conditions, etc. Conditions which might not be there all at once. So meaning you have certain kind of developments which are supposed to be modern when all the conditions are not necessarily developed at the same time, at the same place, and sometimes some conditions not developed at all. When I'm speaking about that, it's reminding me the title of a thesis I read recently on the development of architecture and literature in Iraq in the 60s and 70s, and the subtitle of the thesis was Modernism Without Modernity. So now I come to modernism. Modernism has more to do with a will, a desire for transformation and change. And of course, all these differences in terms of dynamics, these differences in terms of project between modernity and modernism, all this is ending in very diverse, the result of that are very diverse regional and trans-regional histories, more or less connected. And when I'm saying connected, I'm referring to, it is connected on a very banal meaning, but I'm also referring to a less banal notion of connectivity, the connected history, which is a concept developed by Sanjay Subramanian, when he's showing that on a very long, if you take a very long history, and of course he's a very knowledgeable specialist of the colonial Portuguese history, so you could go even a little bit further. But if you really depart from the discoveries, you see that the whole history of the world could be, and can be, because it does it, reworked out of connections, out of movements of different points of activity, of influence, and so on and so forth. And that, of course, these two dynamics are not necessarily completely synchronic between the conditions for modernity and the desire for being modern, which is more modernism. And of course, when you try to think about these very diverse situations in very different geocultural places in the world, you come to the point that you have to deal with very diverse situations and nuance, as well as in terms of institutions, because you are really ranging from the complete absence of it. You have a few countries in the world where museums of modern art are here. I'm speaking about the Museum of Modern Art. I remember discussion in Cairo where people were screaming at me because they understood I was saying that you had no museums in Cairo. And of course, we have the Pharaonic Museum, you have the Coptic Museum. I know all these museums in Cairo. I also know that they have a Museum of Modern Art, but which is, I hope there are not too many Egyptians in the room tonight, which is highly dysfunctional. And this I can really confirm, knowing all the trouble we have for borrowing the works from the Egyptian surrealists. So, of course, these very different situations have very different consequences in terms of conservation, in terms of visibility or invisibility of the works for the public, and in that case, I think it would be wiser to say for publics, because it's always a little bit irritating for me, at least, to hear people speaking about the public first as if we knew it, and second, as if the public was the kind of one thing, like a big package, and we know that you have different audiences, that the constitution of audiences is also very diverse depending on the time and the place, and that we also know that in our proper circumstances, whether it's Paris or New York or Berlin, or the audience is not necessarily everybody. So when it comes to this possible deficit, again, in terms of conservation, accessibility to the works, and problematical or chaotic transmission of the works and their knowledge to the next generations, I think, of course, it's a very real series of problems we have to deal with. But I also think, and this, again, it's not an idea, it's also an experience I did in many travelings and staying with people and acceding to works in many, many different ways. I think that it's one way of looking at the situation, and this way is a little bit negative, and I think that the perspective is more than that, because I want to see the other side of the problem of this absence of museums or deficits. I can see that wherever you go, or in most of the places I've been at least, works have been produced, artists or subjects assuming the figure and paper of the artist in very dissimilar and sometimes very impossible circumstances are de facto existing, and the works are there. And I also I think that we have to understand that these problems are also creating a very, very big diversity in terms of collections and the modality of the collections. And we have to pay attention to that. You have very interesting collections in certain parts of the world which are managed by very diverse kinds of communities, whether they are religious communities, whether they are syndicates, whether they are groups of people who took responsibility for keeping an old atelier and so on and so forth, or individuals which are showing the works whenever and wherever they can. So I think that all these situations are, when you look at all of them, are not necessarily, shouldn't be at least considered as exceptions, but more as the ways the modern developed in many places in the world. And we have to cooperate and collaborate, and it's I heard that Kathy was insisting on this word, and I think it's a very important one these days. So now I come to how to, I'm not giving recipes, it would be paid much more if I was the good one for recipes, but at least how to proceed when we have a first constatation of the situation we are in now. Of course, a big museum is supposed to enlarge, to complete, but also to complexify the modern collections. And these days, you see very often what I call a very, I don't know in English how you would say, collectionnite aiguë. Collectionitis, it's like when you are sick, you collect at any cost. And this is not necessarily the best way, even if I know that a museum with a big collection, it's like a human body, you know, you need to eat every day, so it's very necessary to go on with the collection, but of course with a certain, if not rule, with a certain dynamic and with a certain set of ideas, if possible. So we could say that if the specific DNA of a big collection is to go on collecting, it has not to be in a kind of a tutti frutti or one of each way, which is the funny way of naming a new phantasm of exhaustivity, which is a kind of unsaid comeback to questionable universalist pretensions. And I think it's something which is quite important. You know, as long as you are not able to show a paradigm, or at least a very consistent series of works, it's very often playing against the work and against the artist. I could mention one example. We were recently offered a work by Bahman Moasses, the very important Iranian artist who worked mainly in the 50s up till the end of the 70s, even so. He passed away more recently. It was a Minotaur from his mythological series. And this Minotaur is really very special in Moasses mythology, and the way he looks. And this Minotaur has no hands, no feet, no extremities. It's a handicapped, it's a mutilated Minotaur. And when you would have this Minotaur in the collection, only this piece, first you would give a very restricted view on the very complex work developed by Bahman Moasses over 40 years. But in the collection of the National Museum of Modern Art, this Minotaur would have many risks to be completely swallowed by other Minotaurs we have, beginning with the Minotaurs by Picasso and people from this generation. So again, I'm not against having Bahman Moasses. I would be very pleased when we would be rich enough for buying minimum 5. But in this kind of situation, I think that we have to be to think twice before having one work of an artist, especially these days when we know that unless a very, very radical change, we will have less and less money and less possibilities for buying the works. And you also know that when you come to, especially in France, non-public money, I know that public is not the same in French and in English, but when the money is coming from private partners, it's even more difficult to keep a certain, not control, but certain radicality on the choices you are making for the collection. So I think that these two aspects, it's not just about money. It's about the money and the dynamic behind, which has to or should make us more aware and wise in the selection of the works. It's also very important, when you want to give your audience or the very different publics who are visiting, from those who are visiting very regularly to people who come just because they are in Paris. But I'm always thinking about those who are coming back. Even so, I'm maybe not right if I think about statistics, but let's dream that we have a strong body of people who are coming back. So when you think about these people and you try to think about the experience, the knowledge is another thing, but the experience of global modern you could give in a Western modern art collection. Again, the acquisition is very important to buy new works. Again, if you can present a meaningful, consistent body of works by an artist. But what is also very important, and in certain situations even more important, is to allow the permanent questioning of the limits of your collection through the permanent presence and presentation of heterogeneous bodies. By heterogeneous bodies, I mean certain works by artists who don't have in the collection, we can't have in the collection. By heterogeneous bodies, and sometimes it's connected, I also mean the presentation of collections which have been put together in very, very different circumstances than those we collected in Paris or in New York. And in that case, of course, you have to work in a kind of, you have many other words which are possible, but I often use the word focused, which is by definition a not too big exhibition. It can be a small or middle size, middle format exhibition, which is organized around a specific work, and it's all history or resonance. It can be organized around an unexpected dialogue or encounter in the city, Paris, New York, between two artists coming from sometimes improbable circumstances. And doing that, you could allow people to access the multiple experiences and paradoxical forms of the modern in diverse geocultural places. And doing that is not to compare. Doing that is to give people the notion that you have other ways of working at the same moment, and that not everybody is using the same forms, the same tools, the same materialities, but everybody is living in the same time. Even so, this you could discuss, because when you begin to work in terms of diachronies, what time, but you know, it's close to a metaphysical question, and I'm not sure it's something you can really solve in a museum accrochage or presentation. Of course, when you are dealing with this very precise focus and bodies of works, you are more able to think about, and if possible, to construct paradigms which are helping to understand the conceptual and formal project of the artist in a specific moment and context. So by building paradigms, I mean, you know, it's only when you are working very precisely on a certain body of work and you have to try to understand what is the montage, how did the artist articulated ideas, historical, social, cultural moment with forms that you really begin to understand in another way than just comparing a geometric form to another geometric form, or in just trying to discuss if it's more interesting in this country because it's abstract than if it's figurative. You know, this kind of endless discussions I personally find very unnecessary and unproductive. And unfortunately, still you still read and hear that a lot these days. The construction of paradigms is also helping you precisely to go further than simplistic schema and classifications, the figurative versus abstract, and the complex issue of materialities of the works, which is of course rooted into specific histories. So I would like to, because I'm really waiting for a question, whether it's Singapore or I would like to conclude, of course, as any conclusion, very temporary conclusion, with a quote from Iftikhar Dadi. Iftikhar Dadi is a Pakistani art historian who is working a lot with Southeast Asian artists, and I would like to read this statement he made in his book Modernism and the Art of Muslim South Asia, which was published in 2012. Investigating artistic practices at the peripheries of canonical modernism demands careful and patient work, including an awareness of social and political history, languages and literatures, and other cultural conceptions the artist engage with. In short, a writing of artistic practice that respects the formalist properties of the art, but also situates it with reference to the intellectual history of the time and the region, and along the artist's experience of physical and metaphorical travel. So I think that this is, it's for me, very, it's not a Bible or Quran, or I'm not working like that, but it's a very inspiring sentence, because it's very precise, very modest, and I think that is really touching on the main points without taking us again in very simplistic opposition between abstract and non-abstract, and modern and the non-modern and the center. The only words I'm not too keen about is peripheries, but I don't think it's very important when you think about the rest.
Thank you so much, Catherine. So there's a lot to unpack, and I have many questions about the lexicon that you've given, which I hope we can come back later, which included tutti frutti, and something that I think in English will translate as collectitis, and other terms that I hope we can go back to, so we can all write them down. But I think, for me, the place that I'd like to start at, perhaps, if you'll allow, is the idea of rethinking the museum. What's intriguing to me is that you've presented or framed the talk as in very personal terms, which I'd like to stress, which is to think about how one translates, how you may translate your past projects, as radical as they may have been, as uninstitutional as they may have been often. I'm thinking of contemporary Arab representations, which was really a kind of network, an intangible, itinerant series of exhibitions, discursive programs that didn't belong in one institution only. And you're trying to translate all these past projects to the life of an institution, to the museum. So in rethinking what the museum of the 21st century might be, you gave us a bit of a recipe. And you mentioned that you mentioned the I mean, maybe we can just start there. If you can maybe say a little bit more about the kind of personal translation work that takes place when you try to engage in the institution that is the National Museum of Modern Art at the Pompidou.
So I mean, I don't feel, it's not that I want to pack or install all I did in the last 20 years in the MNAM. It's more that it's all these projects are really part of, it's maybe more to do with the methodology. And I could go on working on an independent project and do the private discussion with Cathy before, but I'm not sure it's really the best idea you can have these days to work in a big museum, because it's absolutely damaging for your time, your health, and so on and so forth. So what I could say is that a little bit, I don't know if it's the opposite, but at the moment where I am, I want to be honest with the director who invited me and with the team I'm working with. So I'm trying to think about a certain number of major problems the museum has, and which is not just for the MNAM, which is, I think, a certain number of these problems are really the same in major modern and contemporary collection. But again, the modern is probably the more important at the moment. I feel like, I have to think and trying to think from what I did, which doesn't mean doing in Bobo project, which will be much better done outside, but to use a certain number of knowledge, beginning with artist works. I crossed over the last 20 years, which I would like to see in the collection, for instance. But also, let's say, it's like trying to think about the paradoxes of the institution today in a kind of inside-outside positioning. Because, of course, the idea is not to bring all I did and all I lack to the NAM. I'm saying NAM, National Museum of Modern Art, because we are just one element of Beaubourg. So I know that for all over the world, the museum is supposed to be Beaubourg, and I would love if it was granting us more money, and we are just the propaganda, but when it comes to the budget, it's not really what we get from the propaganda is not enough.
But there is also, you've also expressed a real trust in modern art museums. And I think when you were talking about the very few places that actually have museums of modern art that sort of fit your description of them, you also spoke about the resulting visibility and invisibility of the works. And I wanted to ask you to maybe expand on this, because I could understand this in different ways. I could understand this in terms of, I think you did mention actually taking care of the work and making it accessible to publics and audiences. So I see there one example of visibility and invisibility. If the work is not accessible, it is not visible. But I also wondered if you might include the visibility of artistic practice that is preserved, that is remembered by these museums of modern arts, because it is included. So it's sort of prompting us to ask the question of what is not included, what are the blind spots of the construction of these museums of modern art.
Yeah, when I was mentioning I was not more thinking about the deficits in places where you didn't have the Museum of Modern Art as a major institution, as a model. Another model which is close to, again, it was always taken for granted. But if you look carefully, it really worked well, in a way, in very few circumstances. Or MoMA, or NAM, even TED is a little bit questionable on this level. So again, I think that these models which we were given are not the rules, they are the exceptions. So again, now we have to think about the rest. This is one thing, but the other thing is when you are working in one of these museums, or when you are responsible for it, and you have many levels of responsibility, you can say, okay, these museums, it's interesting, but now it's not more the moment. So just you feel like responsible for the collection. You feel responsible for the history of the collection. And not meaning you don't move, that you move in the right way, but you can't just wash your hands and saying, oh, it's a wonderful collection, and what? But this is, you have a certain manner of operating in these big collections, which is maybe not adequate in other smaller museums. And again, my point is not these are the only good museums, but it's not either, because it would be too simplistic and a little bit stupid. They are wrong. It happened. It functioned as a model. The collections are absolutely amazing and impossible to build now. Whatever the money you would get, you are not able now to do again a MoMA or a NAM. And my question is more about the diversity of museums of modern art and how to complexify, how to use these different places. And if you want to invent other places than museums, why not? But how to articulate these different places in order to give a more complex and complete view on what really happened in the modern moment. So of course it has to do with visibility and invisibility. It has to do with works which have been completely unseen for a long time. When I was in Singapore, I came across the work of an artist. He's also from Burma, Myanmar, Burma, Birmanie, Aung San. Aung San lived most of his life and part of it under the worst time of the dictatorship. And he's an artist who is completely visible now after he passed away. And you could discuss, he stayed on his own, he was living really isolated and so on and so forth. But what does it mean, a subject? And it's what I wanted to mean. What does it mean, a subject was very few, for not saying no, conditions for functioning as an artist, and who is, whatever the circumstances are, identifying himself as an artist and taking the role of an artist. So, you have many many instances of it. So, again, it's not the question is not to just look at that. But for me, it's also this kind of artists and this kind of works and this kind of, let's say, invisible activity for a certain number of reasons is part of the modern development. So which has to be taken into consideration. Of course, I completely agree with you. When you said the visibility, it would be too simple. The visibility could be reduced to the simple presence of works on the walls. It's much more layered and much more complex than that.
And maybe a bit more specifically, beyond the exhibition of the collection or the building of the collection, the acquisition of the collection, I think all museums today have research departments and education departments, or mediation, as we say in French. It's this strange idea. Specifically, what do you propose might sort of achieve this desire that might achieve your proposition, might achieve your desire to reveal the context of production and not just the work itself?
You have different ways. It's of course you enter in very subtle zones, and it begins with very simple things which have to do with the presentation of the works. And I have to say that I'm sometimes a little bit upset when I see no more thinking into the way you could show certain works. For instance, I was discussing recently with a friend the case of an amazing artist from Colombia, Antonio Caro. And I was telling this friend, for me, one of the most powerful work, and in French I would say travail, and I won't say œuvre, and I know why. The most powerful work, within English it could mean the same. In French, travail is not enough.
There's something a little more active and process-driven about travail.
Yes, and
less static.
Less susceptible of being fetishized, let's say. It's the work he did in Bogota. It was, I think, 74, the Biennale. And it was at the entrance, and the text was saying, "Aquí no cabe arte." Here, art has nothing to do in Spanish. And each letter of the sentence, "Aquí no cabe el arte," so A-Q-U-E, was one very well-designed letter, and very, very precise, kind of minimal work. And under you had like a line, and when you would look carefully, the line was a very short bio of a militant or a student who had been killed by the army in the previous years. So, this work, for instance, I think, what do we do with a work like that? Of course, no special frame, it should be in a room where we have other works by artists who have been engaged politically or who participated to certain groups. You can find solutions, but you have to be very precise, and it's more and more difficult in museums where it's very difficult to be precise when you have one guy calling you because you can't use this wall because of that, or that they changed it because there is a new exhibition and they take the work before the end of your accrochage and so on and so forth. But you have certain ways, and for me it's very, very important. I won't feel honest if this work was shown next to a pop image. Or
It's interesting to me that you're staying with the work and the way that it is being hung or displayed, and not necessarily entering this kind of more discursive aspect of what curating might be today also.
No, I think it's very important, but not when it is, it's not either or. And sometimes, I think that an exhibition is not just like a text. So when there is, I'm not against criticality, and there is one show I saw in Paris 2 years ago, I think, which was absolutely amazing, organized by Thumesh Sharma, the Indian art curator from Bombay. And it was a kind of very cryptical, but it was a very small space, Cadiz Foundation in Paris, so it was fitting absolutely. You couldn't do that on 3,000 square meters, but in this very small space, it was absolutely perfect. You had like points of condensation of the forms of the modern in India. You won't identify as modern when you don't have a deep knowledge of the materiality of the works, of the processes, and so on and so forth. So this is absolutely possible, but this show was absolutely musical in the way the works had been displayed. So I think it's not either or, but I think that even so, we know that from Marcel Duchamp on, and probably even before, a work of art is not only visible. You still have to deal with a certain kind of objects, or you have to deal with something which has to do with a precise occupation of a space for a certain time, and so on and so forth. And I think that when you don't do that precisely, in that case, you better work just on what I call in Documenta the porous borders of the exhibition, les bords poreux de l'exposition, meaning all these necessary, compulsory, discursive elements which are part of the conception of the piece, of the life of the piece, and of the interpretation of the piece, of course.
I'm going to want to open for questions, but I'll just ask for one more thing before I do, so we may actually get on to Kathy's questions about reframing modernisms and the Singapore collaboration with the Pompidou. Could you maybe briefly describe actually how it worked and what took place, and talk about this experience of parallel presentation a bit more?
So I will explain, because I don't know if Kathy knows all the details, so I will will try at least to give all the details. And being honest, the project was existing before I came back to Pompidou, and it was part of the project Pompidou is organizing HLM, hors les murs, outside of the walls, meaning exhibitions which are made with works from the collection and which are sold to museums. It's very banal these days. And this exhibition had been conceived in a way I found absolutely ridiculous. And it was supposed to be 1 year, one work. So imagine the image you can give to these Singaporean people of an exhibition, the development of the modern in the collection with one work, 1 year. Plus knowing, and I think it's the same in MoMA, that each time you are working on an exhibition which is supposed to be organized for touring, you have to deal with your colleagues. Picasso, no. Matisse, no. This is too fragile. This is for my show next year. So you are really, and I'm joking, but it's really the painful truth. You are really ending with something a little bit. It's like a strange body, because you have a little bit too much of this one, not enough of this, and so on. So we said, okay, we stop with it. 1 year, one work. It's absolutely ridiculous. Second, I said that I would find boring to work again with a collection and in very limited conditions plus, and that it could be more interesting for both to have a kind of discussion between modern Southeast Asian works and the modern works from the NAM collection, which is a more, let's say, for speaking fast, Western collection. I don't like too much this kind of very square formulation because, of course, it's more Western collection than an African one, that's for sure. But on another hand, it's I think that we should pay more and more attention to all the heterogeneities which are included in the modern, and to a certain extent constitutive of the modern, meaning the many works which have been, which are in our collections and which have been built between one place and another. You know, I was looking the other day at the very big painting we have by Vicente do Rego Monteiro, who is a modernist Brazilian artist from the 20s. And researching, because the question Paulo Bruschi, the artist from Recife, asked me, researching and finding out that do Rego Monteiro had been in Paris in the 20s, this we know, but had worked very closely with poets, developing, it was the beginning of the, in English you should say, poésie sonore, sound poetry, poésie sonore, when poetry is also a musical experiment and so on and so forth. So, you know, now it's quite interesting because in the next presentation of the collection, I would articulate do Rego Monteiro with these researches, and of course with elements Paulo Bruschi included in his own work in the late 90s. So again, this notion of Western, and we ended, the title was at the end, Reforming Modernism, works from Southeast Asia, West Europe and beyond. And I think you have a lot of beyond in the supposed to be Western collection of Beaubourg. But of course, the point here was to see how two modern moments would be able to dialogue or not. And I have to say that the works I'm the more interested in are those which are not really in dialogue with any of our modern moments. And what I found extremely interesting, more than interesting, very powerful, really something very strong. When I arrived in Singapore and I thought a colleague of mine installed the works, and it's a different story, and it's absolutely amazing to look at that. It's a very different story. You have a very different ways of structuring. I mean, it's a different story. And so I told the people in Beaubourg, I'm not sure they will follow me because they need money, that next time it would be probably very interesting for us, but also, and maybe even more, for audiences to have a very well organized, very subtly articulated exhibition on a certain aspect of modern Southeast Asian art, for instance. So, you know, it's a kind of, let's say, you have to work out from, in this case, this kind of more or less oblige circumstances, and you have to try, you have to do it well. And now, when we go back to what I was trying to explain before, the focus out of this exhibition and out of this experience and being with the colleagues and discussing with them and seeing major collections of Southeast Asian art, I already have a few projects of having focused very specific corpus of works by 3 artists from the region in dialogue with certain parts of our collection.
And that pairing also makes things just twice as complicated, because everything that you've said about the building of a collection and a modern art collection is true of the collection of the museum in Singapore as well, of course. The speaker that we had at the Curator's Perspective before you, Joselina Cruz from the Philippines, was a curator at the National Museum of Singapore about 10 years ago, and she spoke a little bit last month about the the kind of the complexities, or lack thereof, perhaps, of articulating Southeast Asian art through just one collection, that of the Singapore Art Museum. So There's all of these layers of complications or traps. In a
And
way.
now they have the inaugural exhibition, which is on for a long, on more than 1 year, if I understood well, is including also works from Southeast Asia, which are not belonging to National Gallery Singapore. So it's a very, very important collection, and you can really understand a few things going through.
Interesting. As promised, I'll open to the floor. So I can't really see any of you, but if you raise your hand and gesture very dynamically, I'm sure we'll find you with a mic. I do see a hand.
Hello? I'm not sure. Is it working?
I think it's working.
Okay. Just one question. Do you think as a French or American or Westerner curator, do you have the key to understand really complex work from foreign artists, Colombian artists, artists from Southeast Asia, or artists from Africa? Do you think as a French curator who maybe you've traveled and maybe addressed to other people, other international curator, you think you have like the keys really to understand and to share properly? This is like, the idea of internationalism and international curating is also really tricky because it's bringing international work into the Western thought as well, and to a Western public or to an institution that is, based in Paris, Moderne, or based in New York and Moderne, and like how do you translate, how the translation is made. Am I understandable, or is it understandable? I mean, it's just like, yeah,
No,
like the
it's very-
complexity of
No, it's very
bringing a
clear.
work-
No, it's
Okay.
very clear.
Sorry.
No, it's very clear. First, I don't. I think that whoever you are, I don't believe it in ethnicities. When it comes to knowledge. So I think wherever you are coming from, you can work, and it's what I'm trying to do. When I did the exhibition of Fredo, I knew because he passed away. I knew Fredo in the early 70s, and I think that I know quite well his work. And when I'm traveling, and when I'm deciding to work with this or that artist, it's always including staying, understanding, and redoing what Iftikhar Dadi was recommending. So, I think it's more the question of that you do your own work, and it's very important to be able, and of course it's very demanding, and you realize tonight you are not universal. You have certain parts of the world I never went. You have certain cultures I'm less interested than other ones, and I'm really there are enough I'm really interested in and can concentrate. So I think it's really I understand what you mean, because it's absolutely clear that you have a very strong focus on artists who are coming, but I think we have also to keep in mind many things which are happening in situ, many back and forth, many exchanges, and you see that the real problem now is more about you have to make also decisions. Also for artists, sometimes it's more difficult to work in this situation than in this one, but you have to make your decisions, and you see certain works which are damaged because they are not really built up in the right place. But this is we are all responsible of what we do. But I understand what you mean when you would criticize a certain kind of curatorial tourism, which is of course existing. I can understand when you are criticizing a kind of fashion, for bringing young artists from wherever. But you know, people do what they have to do. And again, I know that you can work very precisely. When we organized the exhibition on modern art in Iran from the 60s up till now, and we knew that we would do something different from the exhibition which had been organized in New York, because we won't ignore the revolution which happened, and which is not something you can say, it was not, and you didn't like it, and you cannot like it, but it happened. And when you try to look at it, you realize, and it's maybe not something easy to deal with for many people, that you have, of course, a very, very violent rupture, but you have also lines of continuity during and through the Iranian Revolution, and especially when you look at certain artists' works. So I think it was, and I worked on this exhibition with Mourad Montazami, who is Iranian speaking Farsi, even so has been raised in Paris, but it's very, very close to his country. So you know, you always try to do, and you don't have one recipe, you have, each time it's a different context. You know, when I met the Asawi, the first night we went for dinner together, he was very, very, more than surprised, he was afraid. Because he thought I knew too many things about Baghdad. Because I went 3 times in Baghdad. I can tell you, I didn't sleep. I was really very moving around, meeting many, many people. So I think you just have to do your work, which doesn't mean that you become all of a sudden a specialist, but you know, that you can really evaluate a work, that you can understand that when this drawing was made, the artist was in conflict or in a dialogue or in love with this or that poet, or you have to know that it's a moment when something very severe happened politically, and so on and so forth. But this is really homeworks. You know, I won't really trust curators who are not working this way.
Thank you. Another question? Yes.
Hi, Catherine. Thank you very much. It was very, very informative. I think we all, or most of us, if not all of us, understand the importance of modern collections to the culture, to the various publics in each country. What conditions do you think are lacking in some countries and in their institutions that they don't have those types of collections and doing the so-called right things with those collections? Is that possible to answer?
Of course, and no, I understand your question, but I think I was very clear saying I was not giving a recipe, and I was not at all saying that there is no life outside from MoMA or MNAM. I was just trying to say that these collections, which are major modern art collections, have been always introduced as the rules when there are exceptions, and that precisely now we have also to do with all the institutions because sometimes you have institutions, sometimes you have no institutions, you have situations. So now we have to deal with these many diverse situations or institutions in many parts of the world where things didn't happen this way. And again, this is the richness of the moment we are living in, to be able to articulate these very different parts of the modern. And to articulate doesn't mean that you have to collect and that you have, in a kind of neo-colonial way, to repatriate everything into your museum. It's more of the opposite, in a way, to be able to articulate, to enlarge, to discuss, to problematize. And of course, when we say that, we have to be honest and serious, and don't speak like Marie Antoinette, you know, because we know that in many countries, the simple fact of asking this question would be people would laugh because you have terrible urgencies, which are absolutely not compatible with institution or the normal organization of an institution, or even thinking about the modern art which has been produced or not in the country. So all this we have to be conscious about. Doesn't mean that you have to you have to be conscious about that. So when you are dealing with certain artists or with a certain place, you have to know where you are. It's like in the world that you don't, you don't. When I was in Baghdad, and when you go to what's left of the museum, and when you see all these works, not even 50, so damaged, I don't felt like asking too many details to people because it was just obscene. It was gone, punto. And of course, now when I see, or when I know that a major work is in Jordan or this, I move because this is absolutely normal, and the works have to go back to the Baghdad Museum, or to the artist at least. But these are side issues. But we have to be very aware of the situation we are living in. So again, in certain situations, it's absolutely crucial to leave a local archive, or to leave a group of people who organize things for 20 years and sometimes much more, to do what they have to do.
I think there was a question. Gabriella, did you still have a question? It's gone? Okay, there's another one right here, same area.
Hello, thanks for the wonderful talk. I have a question about this notion of working in situ and working on the grounds and investigating physically the works of art, and also the history that informed it. I see there's a certain tension or problem or contrast between the immediacy and the intimacy of a work of art and the cultural and historical awareness of where it came from, where in the sense that the latter is not always so easily acquired, and it takes time, and sometimes it takes translation, and takes years and years of hard work. And it's when we move from modern to postmodern, it's getting harder and harder to grasp or to work through translation, because we have local cultures and other forms of subcultures that are generating themselves rapidly and extensively. So is this the problem that you encounter often in your work, and how do you reconcile that sort of contrast of temporalities?
I didn't get the last two sentences of your, because I understood very well the first. How do you get the knowledge?
Right, the immediate knowledge and the sort of awareness.
The very end of your question, I didn't get the point.
The end of the question is to ask you specifically in your own practice, how do you reconcile that, and how do you understand it?
So, I mean, you have two things, for instance, I remember when we organized the Elio Oiticica exhibition in Jeu de Paume, I got many, many comments, even from colleagues saying, oh, it's wonderful, these monochromes, wonderful colors, but we did that much before. So first, I never understood who were the we. We did that. Who were the we? And, it was really like a monochrome is a monochrome. And of course, if you know Elio Oiticica's work, you will understand that the materiality, the texture, the way the pigments were used, and so on and so forth, it could take hours to discuss that, is absolutely constitutive of the work. And the point is not that it looks like another monochrome produced in the 20s by I don't know whom, and so on and so forth. So I think that the point is to be attentive. And I agree with you, but there is one, when you are really working seriously, you see that it's like probably gymnastic, for certain people, your body is really getting trained. You become more and more in music. Let's say it's more elegant comparison, like in music. You are getting used to certain rhythm and tune, so you can enter. It's things are the methods is coming in a much easier way. So it has not to become a rule or a methodology. It would be boring and not necessarily good for the deep understanding of the works. But I think it's something you begin to be acquainted.
Almost like instinctive.
Not instinctive, but you know that there is something behind, and you begin to. So I don't think it's such a problem for the curators, for the people who are knowing. And after, it's more the second level of the problem is how you are showing the works, how you present, and so on and so forth. But I don't think that it's because each time you will always find people who know about the works, and it's absolutely crucial these days. It's something I didn't mention in my presentation. I should have done it. Of course, one of the major problems when it comes to geocultural regions where you have some deficits in terms of institution is the problem of what I call the non-academic experts, meaning people who have been very close to the artist, who have a very deep knowledge of the culture, of who did what, and where are things, and why, and so on and so forth, and who are people who, and you have a certain number of these cases in the Arab world, but probably in other worlds as well, people whom for economical, political, social reasons have not gone to university sometimes, and have never published. So, whenever they pass away, this is the end. And it's, I think, one of the urgent mission for research group centers would be to make interviews of these people, because when it's over, and don't believe it's very rare. Even when I was in Abu Dhabi and I really wanted to meet with Abdelrahman Maklouf, who is an Egyptian architect, and he came to Saudi and after the Emirates in the late 50s, and he became very looked at for the work he did in Riyadh and Jeddah, and after he was hired by Sheikh Zayed in Abu Dhabi, and he was responsible for the master plan of the city, the second master plan of Abu Dhabi. And I was really, really surprised that at the time, so it was like 10 years ago, he had no interview. Nobody was, and I remember speaking with Rem Koolhaas, who was working on his book. Rem didn't know him, and he was very, of course, interested and happy to meet with him. So, it's really a very deep and complicated issue.
It's again this sort of idea of visibility and invisibility in more informal structures of
because
knowledge.
You have many different ways of transmitting, many different ways of keeping works, and so on and so forth. So now we have to come to a point where, of course, it has to go through the archive, because by definition the archive can circulate. But you have also the very I think it was a very hot debate in the States, the question of the archive, that who is allowed to take the archive from a country, from a place. And on this I have some mixed feelings, because I have to say that I'm still upset with what happened to Oiticica's archive because of this family. Impresentables, como decimos en castellano, pero bueno. And so, I think I would prefer to have Oiticica in Houston, Marican Men Ramirez archive, than burnt, for instance. But this was an extreme case, and I'm also, of course, in favor of helping people or contributing to the, not a social worker, so I'm not helping anybody, but contributing to the conservation of documents and works where they have been invented, produced, and where they should be transmitted to the next generation. When you spoke about Singapore, I think it's also very important, and I think it's a very difficult point for them, because Singapore is not in the moon. Singapore is on a very contemporary world, consumerist, and everybody wants to see the big names and the very expensive artists, of course, who are shown in London and New York, and my colleagues have a lot of, they have to fight a lot for having enough presentation for the local, even if it's a very large locality, Southeast Asian art. So I think it's really, everybody is responsible in a way, and it's very important that very, very strong and big regional modernities are shown in situ when possible. You have an amazing collection also in Japan, in Fukuoka. So it's not that Japan is not allowed, and everybody is allowed, but first of all, I think that we are lucky enough for having so many works which have been well preserved from Southeast Asia. So it's not a luxury to have a few places where you can have a very comprehensive and consistent presentation of many different works and artists.
Well, Catherine, I think these thoughts on perhaps what is the process of construction of history in many ways is a nice place to maybe leave it. And I think we can stay for a few more minutes. If there's any kind of urgent questions, you can come to the front and ask them directly to Catherine. But for now, I'd like to thank you so very much for coming to New York and presenting. Thank you.
Thank you.